Reeling, the 41st annual Chicago LGBTQ Plus International Film Festival runs September 21st through October 8th. And here to give us a preview are two of the people who curate the fest, Morgan John Fox, who is our features programmer, and Dan Pal, who is our documentaries featured programmer. Thank you both so much for your time today.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
having
for
us.
having us.
Really appreciate it.
Oh, of course. Let's talk a little bit, Morgan, about the Mattachine Family, kicking off the fest September 21st at the Music Box. Chicagoland's own Nico Tortorello and Schitt's Creek Emily Hampshire star in the film.
Yeah, Mattachine is a super fun film. I think it's also evident in this year's program that we're tackling subjects that have sort of grown up over the years. There's a lot of films that deal with coming of age and coming out and this kind of thing that are a staple of Queer Film Fest. But to see a film like Mattachine Family, which is about a couple who are, dealing with adoption and what it means to be an adult who are starting a family and kind of how that plays into our relationships and our responsibilities as queer people. And it's such a beautiful film. And, part of it is these echo things that I've been sort of experiencing in my life at this point at my age of thinking about parenthood and having a lot of friends with kids. And I just thought that it so beautifully touched on that subject and all the complexities of that subject, just in general, as humans go through that, but specifically to, queer people and sort of the guiding forces of our life and how different things on those journeys can sort of affect the ways in which we relate to the world and relate to our partner. And it's just such a beautifully touching film, that I think, has some familiar actors and it has a Chicago connection. And I just think it's a super special way to begin our film festival this year.
I got to see a preview of the film and I laughed, I cried. I feel like I've been every single one of these characters in the film. And I gotta say, this is an incredible way to start off the festival.
I agree. It's very wholesome, but also doesn't, pull any. It's a film that, I think it's got some roughness around its edges as well as being just a wholesome, like tearjerker as well. And I think that's what's special about it is it's sort of a well-rounded way to begin a journey that this festival inevitably will take you on.
Dan, let's talk a little bit. I mean, there's so much talk about Studio 54 on the East Coast, but on the West Coast, we had Studio One, and there's a new film, Studio One Forever. Tell me a little bit about what we're going to see in that one.
Oh yeah, that's a great film, and I'm glad you mentioned that because people always hear about Studio 54, but when I mentioned to a couple of people about Studio One, they said, "Oh yeah, I remember Studio One." It was the place to be in West Hollywood. Opened in 1974 and frequented by all kinds of significant people from Rock Hudson and Liza Minnelli and Cheetah Rivera, who's also interviewed in the documentary. And it's just a really, really interesting film about really the last 50 years of gay life, because the first part of it really focuses on sort of the wildness of the 1970s. Then, of course, it gets into the AIDS plague of the 1980s, and there's racism that's discussed in it, in terms of like some of the people that couldn't get in to the bar. But it is a highly entertaining film. It is, I think it's a lot of fun. And I think anybody who's lived through the last 50 years will really, really enjoy it and be familiar with what those circumstances were like.
I mean, just a little bit off topic, but last year we got a film about the sidetrack owners and what that establishment means, especially to the people in Chicago. And I think this is such a wonderful look, especially, you go to so many of these establishments to meet your friends or to maybe have a cocktail or to maybe go on a date, but you don't realize the history behind some of these places that you frequent all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Studio One, it's well, it's called Studio One Forever, but it's not actually there anymore. But I think there's a lot of people that will remember it, but also, again, as you say, like even with Sidetrack, people who've been to any kind of gay bar in the last 40 50 years will appreciate this film. I loved it, definitely.
Morgan, are we getting any of the directors in town for Q&As or introducing the films during the fest?
Oh yeah, there's a whole handful of incredible directors coming into the festival, which is so exciting because I 20 years ago I premiered my first film at Reeling 20 years ago to the date, and I'll never forget that moment of getting that acceptance letter and then coming and being a part of that experience with the audience. And so it's so exciting to have this full circle moment for me to help present these filmmakers and give them, a proper introduction and give them a nice engaging Q&A session after the film. I think that moment of, the film itself is this two-dimensional medium that sits there, but once you have an actor or a director in the audience interacting with the fan, it's so special, both as an audience member but also as the director who spent sometimes years creating these works, and to get to like truly see the reactions and engage with the fans is a incredible way to experience as the audience and as the creator. So we're excited for that.
What do you put into it as far as, you premiering your film here 20 years ago and knowing that excitement you got and the hard work you put into it, and how you were chosen? And as far as like choosing the films that go into the festival, especially, for this year, like what's in your mind as far as like your experience and tying it into 2023?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is just knowing that this festival represents so many things, so many people. For me, it helped launch my career, truly did. And so I take into account not only just how much do I like the movies at face value that I'm watching, or to go after films that are screened at other festivals and maybe they'd already premiered yet, and but also just like looking at what are the impacts that we can have on certain filmmakers or films that are underrepresented, or that maybe had low budgets but have a true big heart. That's something that sort of was representative of my film back 20 years ago. And I just love that, being able to give an opportunity to a filmmaker to share their films, sometimes for the first time. We have several world premieres in this festival this year, and that's super exciting. I think there's like 5 or 6 world premieres of feature films.
That's
And
awesome.
I'm sure maybe for some documentaries as well. And I think that's it's so special. But also just we look for films that audiences will like, that are entertaining, not only touching and moving and that are important for social progress and representative of a diverse group of creators and audience members, but also just, what's going to be fun to watch in a theater.
Oh, it's something, a combo of those two. And Dan, this next question is for you, especially seeing an LGBTQ plus film of the past inspire a new generation. And I'm talking about Chasing Amy, which is going to be premiering this festival season. And we get to see Sav Rogers, the filmmaker, go through his own acceptance of himself, but also how this movie that came out in 1997 is still inspiring filmgoers.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I rewatched that film just in the last day, and it's fascinating to see how ahead of its time Chasing Amy was, but also how controversial it became within the LGBTQ community. And the documentary about Chasing Amy, I think, is just a really interesting, eye-opening account of so much that was going on, not only about just the independent film movement in the 1990s, but then how people so looked at that film and looked at the portrayal of this lesbian character who falls for a straight man played by Ben Affleck, and there's a lot of homophobia in the film, and how she's kind of scorned by her lesbian friends, and so looking back on it with these 25, 26 years in between there, and just the effect that had on the community is really, really interesting to see within this documentary. And there's some great interviews with Kevin Smith, who directed the original film, and Joey Lauren Adams, which is a very interesting interview that is sort of the climax of the film. And but then, as you say too, Rudy, the Sav Rogers and their whole story is fascinating because of the development that Sav went through just in the making of Chasing Amy.
Yeah, and that wasn't something that we went out and did a couple, or that Sam went out and did a couple of interviews. I mean, this took, I believe, over 5 years of time from the beginning to the end. So we get to see that big life change that happens during that time. Do you get a lot of messages as far as people like maybe missing it or maybe skipping over a film and then realizing like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this premiered at Reeling. I should have gone and seen it.
Yeah, I think that's a common thing. There's so many choices these days on where to go to watch movies, how to watch movies. I think it's hard to motivate people to get out of the house to go see movies. I'm a huge lover of the movie theater. It's my sacred space, and I make sure to go at least 3 to 4 times a month whenever I can. And so I think what people need to realize is this is a sacred space, and they're only the first time to see a movie. You don't want to miss that chance because it's so special in the theater with an audience who's also there excited. It's this sort of special secret club that we have to go into this dark room and share these moments and these memories. And there's so many good films here, like we said, that are world premieres, incredible movies, not only like Mattachine Family, Ganymede, which is some Chicago filmmakers, Sam Probst and Colby Holt that, volunteered for Reeling 10 years ago. And now they have their first feature film premiering here. Incredible movie, American Parent, another Chicago filmmaker, Emily Railsback, who's premiering her film. Egghead and Twinkie is another filmmaker, a young Asian filmmaker who I think is really going to be one of these next top 10 filmmakers we'll all hear of who get a big Netflix deal and be making. You want to see these moments with these filmmakers, especially these ones coming and traveling here to be a part of these premieres. Like, you don't want to miss those moments. Don't watch it on Netflix later and click around while you're scrolling your phone. Come to the theater, meet these filmmakers, be a part of that magic moment, because then once your friends are like, hey, have you seen such and such on Netflix? You can be like, oh yeah, not only did I see that, I saw it in person with the filmmaker. I got to meet him, her, they, and got a photo with them, and had this incredible memory. And I think that's what it's about. A place like Reeling, it's about putting together memories of being there in the moment when they were still accessible. You can be the one who knew the early album, before they hit it big, type of thing.
Oh, exactly. I have a couple of those moments that I treasure, and I make sure to tell everybody as much as possible that I was there when so-and-so premiered or so-and-so played at such and such a venue. I also love this year too. I don't know if it's just Mattachine Family and American Parent, or if there's other films that deal with LGBTQ plus parents, but I love how that genre and that topic has kind of transformed over the past, 20 plus years, that it became maybe with their best, I think that Madonna, Rupert Everett movie, the next best thing, where you think of something like that, but now we're everyday families and here are the normal everyday struggles. And obviously it's harder for some people versus others, but I love how that's become its topic in itself. And sometimes, especially LGBTQ plus parents have to arrange a babysitter, and, it's not always easy to get out, but I feel like these movies speak to so many families, and it's definitely a good reason for maybe if you haven't gone to the last couple of years because you've been busy raising kids, to definitely go check out the festival this year.
Yeah, it'll speak to you as well. I think that's what's so cool, honestly, Rudy. I think like not only that, it's just like so many of these genres that we're used to are being reinvented, staying up with the pace of progress in America. Certainly in so many urban settings and even in films that even focus on younger groups, they're almost post-gay in this way of like not focusing on the outside forces that define or oppress, but focusing on just the love, the sweetness of the love, or the struggle of first love, as opposed to a parent who doesn't approve, or the bully at school who wants to, push you down. Just giving room for these queer characters to have this full range of emotion and life experience, whether it's parenthood or whether it's first love or whether it's experiencing love, for the first time as a 50-plus-year-old, and what that's like to reunite with a childhood friend who you never got to be open with or something. And I think that's really beautiful as we see these genres expand and encompass so many life experiences over all ages.
Dan, there's another film I want to chat with you about, because you hear all different versions of being, whether you call it like on the down low or having a beard, but This Is Not Me. That was a movie I was just like this. That just kind of fascinated me as far as what is going on. Tell us a little bit about that movie.
Oh man, that's a great movie. So basically, this is a film in where this person, Mustafa, takes us through essentially Istanbul and takes us through what the experience is like amongst the gay community there. But in particular, which is in part really what you're referencing, is that there are a number of gay men who then choose to marry women to kind of get society off their backs. And they think, some of them think, well, if I marry a woman, does that mean that then I won't be gay anymore? And this Mustafa is, I called him he's like a hero, because he talks to these men and he says, you need to be more open with your family, be more open with the people around you. And it is a really beautiful film because he's just out there, just talking to these people, interviewing them, and also showing us places in Istanbul that are safe or safer spaces for the LGBTQ community. And it's a beautiful film too. It's so well shot. It's almost like a travel log. Like if you ever thought, oh, I want to visit like a country like Turkey, but should I go to Istanbul? This one, it really kind of makes you feel like, yeah, there's a place there, and I want to experience it, and I want to see it, and I want to be there, and I want to maybe help the community along and be a part of it. And I just really really liked it, and Mustafa is just a great character, as it were.
That is amazing. I cannot wait to watch that one. And then final thing I want to ask both of you. Obviously, I've picked out a couple of different highlights, but what are some other ones? Morgan, I guess we can go back to you as far as like, don't miss out on this film, or here's a genre that maybe we didn't talk about that we want to make sure that people go ahead and check out.
Yeah, not only Mattachine Family, not only Ganymede, which we talked about, American Parrot, Egghead and Twinkie. Incredible Nigerian film called All the Colors of the World Are Between Black and White, directed by Babatunde. About every frame of this movie feels like a still image that should be in a coffee table book. And it's such a beautiful sort of meditation on the yearning power of love and loss. And I can't recommend it enough. It's incredible. T Blockers. It's just amazing. So when my first film premiered, I was 23, and I thought that was a young filmmaker. And wow, I was doing this at such a young age. This filmmaker is from Australia, a trans filmmaker. This is her. She's 18. This is her fourth feature film.
Wow.
And it's called T Blockers. Incredible movie that posits zombies as representative of red state America or red state politics. Incredible DIY movie. Just three more really quick. Fancy Dance and Sundance Film, directed by Erica Tremblay, starring Lily Gladstone, who's in Martin Scorsese's new epic film. That movie is absolutely incredible. It's like a Winter's Bone-esque film set on a reservation. And then we have Glitter and Doom, Tom Gustafson's film with the Indigo Girls soundtrack throughout the film, which is sort of like an indie Baz Luhrmann, very colorful, beautiful. And then Chestnut. Lastly, I'll mention Chestnut. I remember being a kid and like seeing some star that I had a crush on, when I was a teenager, some star in movies or TV, and like dreaming, like, having thoughts about wanting to kiss that person, whatever it is. And this would be such an epic moment as a young lesbian. Natalie Dreyer, who plays Nancy Wheeler in Stranger Things, is playing a lesbian in the film Chestnut. And I just think that that's such an epic moment for all aspiring fans of Stranger Things who get to see this opportunity of a great film called Chestnut, Indy, that Natalie is in. And of course, there's lots of other great films, so those are highlights to me, and I look forward to the audience being able to share those with us.
And what about for you, Dan?
Well, I love all of them, but I think a couple that I want to highlight. There's Kenyatta, Do Not Wait Your Turn, which is a documentary about Malcolm Kenyatta, who is this young Black gay politician of sorts, because he really wasn't a politician initially, who decides to run for the U.S. Senate. He's from North Philadelphia. And his story is just so inspirational. It's such a beautiful film. He's got so much positive energy. His relationship is a part of the film. And I just think that this is the kind of film that anybody who has ever considered getting into politics, or if you think, well, I'm young, I'm gay, lesbian, whatever, can I make a stand anywhere? Yes, you can. And he does a beautiful job. And the film is also very entertaining. And I loved it. Excuse me. Another one is called A Big Hairy Hit, or Big Gay Gary. Let me do that again. A Big Gay Hairy Hit. Where the Boys Are, which is it's a documentary about a series, a web series called Where the Bears Are. That really began because these three writers that worked on a number of sitcoms in Hollywood found that they were having a really hard time trying to really find other projects for themselves that Hollywood was willing to greenlight. And so they had created their own web series. And this documentary takes us through the development of that series. It interviews people that were involved with the series. Lots of really great footage from it, from in front of the camera, behind the camera. And what's really, I think, really interesting about it is that it focuses on issues like ageism within the LGBTQ community and things like body image. And they wanted to make a show about bears. And how many shows do we see about bears? And certainly Hollywood doesn't do that. And so they decided to do this. And this is like just years and years of success that then kind of gets put together in this documentary. So that's one that I'm looking forward to people seeing completely. And there's several others. Leilani's Fortune is about this Canadian singer, witch prophet. She is a fascinating character and herself, but she's a beautiful, beautiful singer. And the filmmaker is going to be there, which is I believe her wife. So there's just a lot of really, really interesting films, and you want to see a different side of LGBTQ life. See these films at Reeling, because we're not just showing like the traditional, coming out story. These are different cultures. These are people coming from all sorts of backgrounds. And I think that was one of the things that I was looking for when I was reviewing all of the submissions and various films. And I thought, wow, there's a lot here that we just don't typically see in our films. So I'm excited for people to check out all of them.
And go ahead and check out the whole schedule at reelingfilmfest.org. Tickets are on sale right now too, and then streaming tickets. So if maybe you're not in Chicago but you want to check out one of the films, go ahead and check out which films are streaming on there too. Because for $10, you can go ahead and check out one of these amazing features that we've been chatting about. Dan and Morgan, thank you so much for your time today, and cannot wait for the festival to begin.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.